The rain came down in sheets that night, turning the cobblestone campus paths into rivers of reflected streetlight. Moreau stood under the library awning, his expensive Italian shoes already soaked, watching a woman sprint across the quad with a portfolio clutched against her chest like a lifeline. She slipped on the wet stones, and before he could think, he was running toward her. Her sketches scattered across the ground, watercolor paintings bleeding into puddles. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, frantically gathering what he could save. When their eyes met, everything else disappeared. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache, dark skin glistening with rain, natural hair plastered to her face, eyes that held both fire and vulnerability. "I'm so sorry," he said, holding out a salvage sketch. "Some of them are okay. I think we can." "It's ruined." Her voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. 6 weeks of work for my scholarship review gone. Then I'll help you recreate them." The words came out before he could stop them. "I'm Ethan, business major, terrible artist. But I can mix coffee at 3 in the morning and tell you when something looks amazing." She studied him for a long moment, rain streaming down both their faces. "Amara, art major, scholarship student, and I don't need charity from rich boys who think money fixes everything." "Good," Ethan replied, surprising himself with his boldness. "Because I'm not offering money. I'm offering time." "There's a difference." Something shifted in her expression. She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. "Fine, but if you fall asleep during my all-nighters, you're buying the good coffee. Not that cafeteria garbage. Deal?" He didn't know it then, but that was the moment his life divided into before and after. Before Amara, he'd been sleepwalking through an existence predetermined by his father's empire. After Amara, he finally understood what it meant to be alive. The library became their sanctuary. While other students partied or networked at his father's country club, Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor of the art studio, watching Amara's hands move across canvas with a grace that made him believe in magic. She painted stories, not pretty pictures, but raw truths about identity, struggle, and hope. "Why do you always paint rain?" he asked one night, 3 weeks into what had become their routine. Amara didn't look up from her work. "Because rain doesn't discriminate. It falls on mansions and projects the same way. It washes everything clean, gives everything a chance to start over." She paused, her brush hovering. "Why do you keep coming here, Ethan?" "You don't need to prove anything to me. Maybe I need to prove something to myself." "Which is?" "That I can be more than my father's investment." She finally met his eyes, and he saw understanding there. "You're already more than that. You just don't know it yet." 3 months later, Ethan stood outside her apartment building, a shabby walk-up in the part of town where his driver refused to take him, holding a single canvas. He'd spent 6 weeks working on it in secret, learning technique from YouTube videos and stealing practice time in the art building at dawn. It was terrible by any objective standard, but it was his. He'd painted them. Under the rain, the night they met, when Amara opened the door and saw it, her hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan, I wanted you to know that I see you. Not as some scholarship project or diversity requirement. I see you, Amara Daniels. And everything about you is extraordinary." She pulled him inside, and when she kissed him, it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been but had always belonged. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I love you." "It is crazy," she agreed, her fingers tracing his jawline. "But I love you too. My father's going to lose his mind. I know. He's going to say terrible things. Try to break us apart. Offer you money to leave." Amara pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes. "Then he'll learn that this black woman doesn't break. And neither does her man, right?" Ethan took her face in his hands, memorizing every detail. "I promise you, Amara, no matter what comes, I will never stop choosing you. Never stop loving you. This isn't some college romance that fades after graduation. This is forever." Forever's a long time, Moreau. Not long enough, but forever, as it turned out, was more fragile than either of them understood. 6 months later, Ethan's father made his move. The spring gala was supposed to be Ethan's formal introduction to the business world, his debut as heir apparent to the Moreau empire. When he insisted on bringing Amara as his date, his father's response had been icily simple: "Bring whoever you want. Just know that choices have consequences. Amara wore a simple black dress that cost less than the appetizers being served, but she walked into that ballroom like royalty. Ethan had never been more proud or more terrified. He could feel the stares, hear the whispers cutting through the classical music. Old money recognized new money, and both united in their disdain for anyone they deemed beneath them. "Stay close to me," Ethan murmured, his hand on the small of her back. "I'm not afraid of these people," Amara replied. But he felt the tension in her body. The evening proceeded with painful politeness until his father took the stage. Lawrence Moreau commanded attention the way some men commanded armies, with absolute certainty in his own supremacy. His speech thanked donors, praised tradition, and outlined the company's future. Then his eyes found Amara in the crowd. Of course, tradition means understanding legacy. It means knowing which partnerships strengthen our foundation and which ones, he paused, letting the silence do his work, dilute it. "My son is learning that lesson. Some lessons take longer than others." The room went silent. Every eye turned to Amara. Ethan felt her hand tighten on his arm, felt the moment she decided to leave before the humiliation became unbearable. "Don't," he whispered desperately. "Don't let him win. He already has," she said quietly. "Look around, Ethan. I don't belong here. I never will. Then I don't belong here either." But even as he said it, his father's business partners were surrounding them, their wives offering sympathetic smiles that felt like daggers. Someone suggested Amara might be more comfortable in the auxiliary hall where the staff and entertainment were gathered. Someone else loudly wondered about appropriate boundaries between donors and scholarship recipients. Amara endured it all with her head high, but Ethan saw what it cost her. Saw the way her shoulders set, the way her breathing changed. When his father approached with a check already written out, she finally broke. "Miss Daniels, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Lawrence Moreau said smoothly, the check visible in his hand. "My son has confused infatuation with something more serious. But you seem like an intelligent young woman. Surely you understand that this cannot continue. This amount should help you finish your education and start fresh somewhere else." The ballroom had gone completely quiet. Hundreds of eyes watched as Lawrence held out the check, $50,000 made out to Amara Daniels. Ethan felt his world collapsing into that single moment. "Dad, don't." "Shut up, Ethan." His father didn't even look at him. "Well, Miss Daniels, will you be reasonable?" Amara took the check. For one horrible second, Ethan's heart stopped. Then she tore it precisely in half, the sound of ripping paper impossibly loud in the silence. "I don't want your money, Mr. Moreau. I never did. But I do want you to understand something." Her voice carried across the ballroom, strong and clear. "Your son is worth 1,000 of you. He's kind, he's brilliant, and he sees people as human beings instead of investments. You've spent his whole life trying to turn him into you, but you failed. And that terrifies you." She turned to Ethan, and he saw tears in her eyes for the first time since they'd met. "I love you. God help me, I love you more than I've ever loved anything. But I won't be the reason you lose yourself trying to prove something to a man who'll never understand what we have. Amara, please, I'm going to walk out of here now," she continued, her voice breaking. "And you're going to let me go. Because if you really love me, you'll understand that I can't watch you destroy yourself fighting a world that will never accept us. I don't care what the world thinks, but I do." She touched his face one last time, her fingers trembling. "I do, Ethan, because every time someone stares, every time your father offers me money, every time I walk into a room and watch people decide I'm not good enough, it chips away at who I am. And eventually, there won't be anything left of the woman you fell in love with. Then I'll walk away from all of this. The company, the money, everything. We'll start over somewhere else." Amara smiled through her tears. "You'd grow to resent me. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. You'd wake up one day and realize you gave up your entire future for a girl you met in the rain." She kissed him softly, and he tasted salt. "Goodbye, Ethan Moreau. Thank you for showing me what love could be." She walked out of that ballroom with her head high, leaving behind a check worth $50,000 and a man worth infinitely more. Ethan stood frozen, watching her disappear, feeling his father's hand clamp down on his shoulder. "You'll thank me one day," Lawrence said quietly. When you're running this empire, when you have an appropriate wife and legitimate heirs, you'll understand that I saved you from a colossal mistake. Ethan shook off his father's hand. The only mistake I made was not walking out with her. He ran after her, out of the ballroom, through the lobby, into the rain that had started falling again like the universe was mourning with them. He found her at the valet stand, waiting for a taxi she couldn't afford. Amara. She turned, and he saw her mask finally crack. The strong, defiant woman dissolved into someone breaking apart. He pulled her into his arms, both of them soaking again just like their first night. "Come with me," he begged. "Right now. We'll get in my car and drive until we run out of road. Start over somewhere nobody knows our names. And live on what? Love. That's not how the world works. Then I'll get a job. A real job. I'll flip burgers or stock shelves," or Ethan. She pulled back, framing his face with her hands. "You don't know how to live like that. You've never had to choose between rent and food, never had to work 3 jobs just to stay afloat. I have. And I won't let you drown in my reality while trying to save me from yours. So what? We just give up. Everything we felt, everything we promised each other, it meant nothing. It meant everything. That's why I'm strong enough to let you go." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small canvas, the painting he'd made of them in the rain. "I'm keeping this. And someday, when you're running your father's empire and married to someone appropriate, I hope you'll remember that once upon a time, a black girl from the projects loved you more than life itself." The taxi pulled up. Amara got in without looking back. Ethan stood in the rain, watching the taillights disappear, feeling something fundamental break inside his chest. He didn't know it then, but that was the last time he'd see her for 10 years. 10 years that he spent building exactly what his father wanted, a business empire that spanned continents. 10 years of ruthless deals and calculated risks. 10 years of becoming everything he'd promised her he wouldn't. Women came and went. All of them beautiful, all of them appropriate. None of them Amara. His father threw eligible socialites at him like grenades. Each one more desperate than the last to land the Moreau name. But Ethan never proposed. Never even came close. Because every time he looked at someone, he saw her. Amara in the rain. Amara in the studio. Amara tearing up his father's check. Amara walking away from everything because she loved him too much to let him destroy himself. He kept her painting in his office, hidden behind a false panel where his father couldn't find it and demand he destroy it. Late at night, after another meaningless acquisition or hostile takeover, he'd open that panel and stare at 2 kids in the rain who still believed love could conquer anything. "You're becoming him. You know," his assistant Marcus said one night, finding Ethan alone in his office at 3 a.m. "Your father. Same ruthless focus, same inability to connect, same emptiness in your eyes." "Good," Ethan replied without emotion. "That's what wins, is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're the richest miserable man I've ever met." Ethan closed the panel, sealing away the painting. "Did you come here for a reason, Marcus? Or just to psychoanalyze your boss?" "Actually, yes. The foundation applications came in for this quarter's charitable giving. There's one I think you should see personally. I don't review applications. That's what we pay people for. This one's different." Marcus laid a folder on the desk. "It's an art center for underprivileged kids. They're about to lose their building. The director is asking for emergency funding, so fund it. That's literally your job." The director's name is Amara Daniels. The world stopped. Ethan's hand froze halfway to his scotch glass. 10 years of carefully constructed indifference shattered in an instant. "What did you say?" "Amara Daniels runs the Daniels Foundation art programs for kids in low-income neighborhoods. She's doing incredible work, actually. Former scholarship student who turned her life into a mission to help others like her." Marcus paused. "I did some digging. It's her, Ethan. You're her." Ethan grabbed the folder with shaking hands. Inside were financial statements, program descriptions, testimonials from parents and kids, and photos. Amara teaching a classroom full of children. Amara hanging student artwork. Amara, 10 years older but somehow even more beautiful, smiling at a little girl holding a paintbrush. How much do they need? 200,000 to save the building. Another 100 for programs. Give them $1 million. Anonymous donation. Ethan, and get me the address. I want to visit, personally. The Daniels Foundation operated out of a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that made his driver nervous. Ethan dismissed the car 3 blocks away and walked, wearing jeans and a simple jacket, trying to look like anything other than what he'd become. Through the windows, he could see children everywhere, their laughter spilling out into the street. And there, in the center of it all, was Amara. She moved between easels with practiced grace, encouraging a boy struggling with perspective, laughing with a girl who'd gotten more paint on herself than the canvas. She wore paint-stained jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt, her hair natural and pulled back, and Ethan felt 10 years dissolve in an instant. This was the woman he'd loved, still loved, if he was being honest with himself. A little girl noticed him standing outside, maybe 8 years old, with Amara's eyes and his nose, though he tried to tell himself he was imagining things. She tugged on Amara's sleeve and pointed. Amara turned, and their eyes met through the glass. The world stopped again. She said something to the children, composed herself, and walked to the door. When she opened it, they stood there staring at each other, a decade of silence between them. Ethan, his name and her voice still did things to his chest. I heard about the donation. I should have known it was you. Can we talk? She glanced back at the children. I have a class for another hour. I'll wait. So he did. He sat in the corner of the studio, watching her teach, watching the way she turned her pain into purpose. The little girl kept sneaking glances at him, and he kept trying not to see himself in her features. When class finally ended and the children were collected by parents, Amara sent the girl to wash up. That's Leah, she said quietly, not meeting his eyes. My daughter. How old is she? 8. Almost 9. The math wasn't difficult. Ethan felt his heart stop. Amara, don't. She held up a hand. Please don't ask what you're about to ask. Is she mine? Does it matter? Does it matter? He couldn't keep the emotion from his voice. Are you serious right now? Amara finally looked at him, and he saw tears threatening. I found out I was pregnant 2 months after I left. I tried to call you, Ethan. I swear I did. But your father's people answered. They made it very clear that any contact from me would result in legal action. That you'd moved on. That I'd be painted as some gold digger trying to trap you. So you just never told me. I had a daughter for 8 years, and you never. You had an empire to build. Her voice cracked. I saw the articles, Ethan. Moreau Industries expanding into Asia, Europe, Africa. You became exactly what your father wanted. I wasn't going to drag you back into my world with some DNA test and child support drama. That wasn't your decision to make. No. Tell me honestly, if I'd shown up at your door 9 years ago with a positive pregnancy test, what would you have done? Your father would have assumed I was lying, demanded tests, made my life hell. And some part of you would have wondered too. Would have questioned if I was using a baby to get your money. Ethan wanted to argue, but the truth stopped him. 9 years ago, he'd been angrier, more bitter, more under his father's influence. She was right. He might not have believed her immediately. But now, he said quietly. What about now? Now you're one of the richest men in the country. Now showing up in your life means every media outlet calling me a gold digger. Who waited until you were worth billions? Now I have to protect my daughter from becoming tabloid fodder for loving her father. She doesn't even know I exist, does she? Amara's silence was answer enough. Leah chose that moment to return, paint-free and grinning. Mama, can we get pizza tonight? You promised if I finished my homework. She stopped, seeing the tension between them. Are you okay? I'm fine, baby. Amara's voice instantly shifted to warm and maternal. This is an old friend. Ethan, this is Leah. Leah, say hello. The little girl studied him with unsettling intelligence. You're the one from the painting. The rain painting Mama keeps in her bedroom. Ethan's heart lurched. She kept it. She says it reminds her that love is real even when it ends. Leah extended her hand with formal politeness. It's nice to meet you, Ethan. Are you here to help save our building? Mama says we might have to close if we can't pay rent. Actually, that's why I came. I run a foundation that helps organizations like this. I'd like to make sure you stay open. That's nice of you. She looked between them, clearly picking up on things adults thought they were hiding. Were you and Mama in love? In college, Leah. Amara's face flushed. That's not appropriate. Yes, Ethan interrupted, kneeling to Leah's level. We were very much in love. Your mother is the most remarkable person I've ever known. Then why aren't you together anymore? Out of the mouths of children. Ethan looked up at Amara, saw her struggling to maintain composure. Sometimes love isn't enough, Amara said softly. Sometimes the world makes it too hard. That's stupid, Leah declared with 8-year-old wisdom. If you love someone, you should fight for them. That's what you always tell the kids here, Mama, that we should fight for what matters. She's right, Ethan said, standing. I should have fought harder. I'm sorry, Amara, for not calling back, for not finding you sooner, for becoming everything you were afraid I'd become. You built an empire. That's what you were always meant to do. I built a prison. The empire just happened to look impressive from the outside. He pulled out a business card. This has my private number. Not my assistant, not my father's gatekeepers me. If Leah is mine, I want to know. Not because of money or obligations, but because I've missed 8 years I can never get back, and I refuse to miss another day. He walked to the door, then turned back. And Amara, you're wrong about one thing. I didn't become what my father wanted. I became what losing you made me. There's a difference. The next 3 weeks were torture. Amara called after 2 days. The DNA test was positive 98.7% match. Leah was his daughter. But instead of relief, Ethan felt rage and grief colliding in his chest. 8 years. Birthday parties and first days of school and scraped knees and bad dreams. All of it without him. He threw himself into planning. Anonymous donations weren't enough anymore. He bought the building Amara's foundation operated in, bought the 3 surrounding buildings, started planning an expansion that would turn her small operation into a proper academy. His lawyers drew up trust funds and educational accounts. His assistant fielded increasingly frantic calls from his father, demanding to know why he was throwing money at some ghetto art project. When Amara found out, because, of course she found out, she showed up at his penthouse office unannounced and, furious, "What the hell are you doing?" She slammed architectural plans onto his desk. "The Promise Academy. Are you kidding me right now? I'm investing in education and community development. It's good PR. Bullshit. You're trying to buy your way back into our lives. If I wanted to buy my way in, I'd have led with the trust fund. This isn't about you and me, Amara. This is about Leah and every kid like her who deserves the same opportunities rich kids get handed at birth. Don't you dare use our daughter to justify this ego project. Our daughter. Took you 8 years to say that." The words came out sharper than he intended. Amara's eyes flashed. "You want to be angry? Fine, be angry. I made a choice to protect my child from a world that would have torn her apart. Your father would have destroyed us both fighting for custody just to prove he could. I've seen what people like him do to people like me. People like him." Ethan stood. "You mean people like me? Because that's what you think, isn't it? That I'm just my father with a guilty conscience, aren't you? You're throwing millions around like it'll erase a decade. But money doesn't fix everything, Ethan. It certainly doesn't make you a father." The truth of that hit him like a freight train. "Then tell me what does. Tell me how to be what she needs, because I'm willing to learn." Amara's anger deflated, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She sank into a chair, suddenly looking as lost as he felt. "I don't know. I've been doing this alone for so long. I don't know how to let someone else in, even you. Especially you." Ethan sat across from her, close enough to touch but careful not to. "What if we start small? Dinner, the 3 of us. No contracts, no grand gestures, just getting to know each other. And when the media finds out, when your father finds out you have an illegitimate black daughter, let them. I'm done hiding what matters to protect what doesn't." But the world, as Amara had predicted, was less forgiving. 2 weeks after they'd started careful, tentative co-parenting dinners, park visits, Leah's first art show where Ethan stood in the back and cried watching his daughter explain her painting, someone sold a photo to the tabloids. Ethan Moreau, billionaire bachelor, caught with mystery woman and child. The speculation was immediate and vicious. The headlines wrote themselves: "Billionaire secret family. Gold digger snares Moreau. Love child scandal rocks dynasty." Amara's photo was plastered everywhere. Her foundation dissected, every financial transaction scrutinized. Someone dug up the galley incident from 10 years ago, painting it as a calculated long game by a scheming woman. Athens' board called an emergency meeting. His father showed up in person for the first time in years, face purple with rage. "You're going to issue a statement," Lawrence Moreau commanded. "Deny paternity, deny the relationship, discredit the woman. I've already had legal draft the paperwork." "No?" Ethan's voice was calm, which seemed to infuriate his father more. "Excuse me. I said no. Amara Daniels is the mother of my child. The child I didn't know about because your people threatened her into silence. And she's also the woman I never stopped loving, despite spending 10 years pretending otherwise." The boardroom erupted. Directors shouted about stock prices and shareholder confidence. His father's lawyer threatened votes of no confidence. Through it all, Ethan sat calmly, waiting for the noise to die down. "Are you finished?" he finally asked. "Good. Because here's what's actually going to happen. I'm going to issue a statement confirming that Leah is my daughter and that her mother is a remarkable woman who spent 8 years building something beautiful while I built something empty. I'm going to establish the Promise Academy with full corporate backing, not as charity, but as a foundation investment. And I'm going to step down as CEO." The room went silent. His father looked like he was having a stroke. "You've lost your mind," Lawrence managed. "Over some woman who finished that sentence, and I'll bury you." Ethan's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You're going to retire immediately. I'll make sure you're comfortable, but you're done making decisions for this family. Because here's what I finally understand. Dad, you didn't build an empire. You built a monument to your own ego, and you tried to sacrifice my humanity on its altar. I'm done worshiping there." He stood, gathering his files. "I'll stay on as chairman, but I'm bringing in a CEO who actually cares about more than quarterly returns. And if the board doesn't like it, they can buy me out. I've got enough money to live 10 lifetimes. What I don't have is more time to waste being what you wanted instead of who I am." He walked out of that boardroom the same way Amara had walked out of the Galahad High. Future uncertain, but finally free. The media storm intensified. Morning shows debated his decision. Business analysts predicted disaster. His father gave a scathing interview calling him emotionally compromised and unfit for leadership. But through it all, Ethan showed up. At Leah's school for parent-teacher conferences. At the foundation for afternoon art classes. At Amara's apartment for dinner. Where they worked on co-parenting strategies and slowly, carefully, began rebuilding something neither of them wanted to name yet. 3 months later, the annual charity gala rolled around. The same event where his father had humiliated Amara a decade ago. This time, the invitation came from Ethan, and it wasn't a request. Amara wore the same black dress she'd kept it all these years. But this time, when she walked into that ballroom on Ethan's arm with Leah between them, the whispers were different. Respectful, curious. Because this time, he'd made it clear anyone who disrespected his family would answer to him. He took the stage during the announcement portion. The same stage his father had used as a weapon. 10 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the room. "My father stood here and offered a woman money to get out of my life. He called it protecting legacy. I call it the biggest mistake our family ever made." He looked directly at Amara, who stood frozen with tears streaming down her face. "That woman built an empire of her own, not made of money, but of hope. She took broken kids and taught them they were artists. She took empty buildings and filled them with possibility. She did what I never could. She turned pain into purpose." He descended from the stage, walking through the crowd until he stood in front of her. "I spent 10 years becoming rich and miserable, convinced I was honoring some legacy. But the only legacy worth leaving is love. The kind that crosses every divide society tries to build. The kind that survives separation and scandal and stupidity." Ethan knelt, not proposing, not yet, but kneeling in front of everyone who judged them. "Amara Daniels, I made you a promise in the rain 10 years ago. I promised I'd never stop choosing you. I broke that promise the night I let you walk away. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life keeping the promise I should have kept from the beginning." The ballroom held its breath. Leah grabbed her mother's hand, whispering something only Amara could hear. Amara looked down at Ethan, at this man who'd finally grown into someone worthy of the promises they'd made as kids in love. "Get up, Ethan." Her voice was gentle. "You don't need to kneel for me. I do. Because I finally understand what you tried to tell me that night. You weren't leaving because you were weak. You were leaving because you were strong enough to let me go. Well, I'm strong enough now to. Strong enough to choose love over legacy. Strong enough to tell the world that the greatest thing I'll ever build is a life with you and Leah. And if I say no, if I say I'm still not ready, then I'll wait, however long it takes. Because that's what you do when someone is worth waiting for. Amara pulled him to his feet. You're going to wait a long time then, Ethan Moreau. At least until after dinner. Because Leah and I are starving, and I don't forgive people on an empty stomach. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation the crowd expected, but it was real. Messy and imperfect and real. They left that gala as a family not healed, but healing. Not perfect, but finally moving forward. If you've stayed with us this long, hit that subscribe button. Because love stories like this, the real ones, with all their complications and courage, these are the stories that matter. Drop a comment if you believe in second chances. And like this video if you think some promises are worth keeping. No matter how long it takes. 5 years later, the Promise Academy opened its doors, a sprawling campus where art met opportunity. Where kids like Leah could become anything they dreamed. Ethan and Amara co-founded it, co-ran it, and eventually, after 2 years of couples therapy and hard conversations, became partners in every sense of the word. They got married on the academy grounds, surrounded by students and families whose lives they'd changed. Leah officiated, because she'd waited long enough for her parents to figure things out. The ceremony was simple, but the vows were everything. I promise, Ethan said, rain starting to fall just like it always seemed to when their story reached a turning point, to choose you every day. Not because it's easy, but because you're worth the difficulty. Not because the world approves, but because my heart demands it. I promise, Amara replied, to let you keep choosing. To build something beautiful together, even when it's hard. To teach our daughter that love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up. And they did. Through board meetings and art shows, through Leah's teenage years and the opening of 3 more academies, through his father's eventual grudging acceptance and the slow, careful rebuilding of family. Through everything, they kept showing up for each other, because that's what promises really are. Not perfect declarations and perfect moments, but the choice, made over and over, to stay, to fight, to build something worth building with someone worth the effort. Ethan had started with an empire of money. He ended with an empire of love. And every time it rained, he and Amara would stand outside, holding hands, remembering to kids who met in a storm and learned that some promises echo through decades. They said a man with money could have anything. They were wrong. Money got him nothing but loneliness and regret. Love real, complicated, fought for love that gave him everything. And in the end, that made all the difference. If this story moved you, made you believe in second chances, or reminded you that real love is worth fighting for, subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment sharing your own story of promises kept or love that found its way back. And hit that like button if you believe that some people are worth crossing any divide for. Because in a world obsessed with what divides us, stories like Ethan and Amara's remind us that love real, courageous, and compromising love still conquers all.